Up next in the broadcast, President Park selects a new prime minister as part of a small cabinet shakeup, and accepting the nomination, the ruling party's floor leader, Lee Wan-koo, pledges to speed up economic recovery and reform. Economic performance in the fourth quarter last year turns out to be the lowest in over 2 years, and even though growth for 2015 has been revised down, the BOK says Korea's economy remains on a steady recovery track. Yemen's president, along with the prime minister and cabinet, resigned, throwing the major U.S. ally in the Middle East into the hands of the government's opponents to take the reins. Primetime News begins now. Welcome to Primetime News. Hope you had a wonderful week. Live from Seoul, I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Tae-ri. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We begin at the nation's top office. With hopes of turning the page, President Park Geun-hye is making changes.
She began by nominating a new prime minister this morning as part of her small cabinet shakeup. Our presidential office correspondent Chae Yu-sun has the details.
President Park has nominated the ruling party's floor leader Lee Wan-koo as her new prime minister. Lee, a three-term lawmaker, is thought to have gotten the president's nod for how he negotiated thorny issues with the opposition as floor leader in the past year.
The nominee fully understands President Park's policy direction and has closely cooperated with the opposition to restore parliamentary proceedings. He's the right person to carry through the economic innovation plan, public sector reforms, and communicating with and working for the public.
Friday's nomination was widely expected after the president retained Prime Minister Chung Hong-won last year, despite his resignation to take responsibility for the government's botched handling of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. While Lee needs to get parliamentary approval to take office, there's been no announcement yet on the nominee for the vacant seat of Oceans Minister. In a likely response to her approval ratings plunging to 30% following allegations of her aides abusing power and disorder within her office, President Park reduced authority of some of her longtime aides. But her chief of staff, the one many watchers had speculated will be dismissed, is going to stay put for now. Instead, the president has named a new senior policy coordination secretary, Hyun Jung-taek, to better coordinate her policies inside the presidential office. President Park also announced a new lineup of 4 special advisors whose main task will be to actively communicate the president's policies with parliament. Meanwhile, President Park's Civil Affairs Secretary was promoted to Senior Secretary after his former boss, Kim Young-han, resigned, having refused to appear at a parliamentary hearing for a recent document leak scandal. Chae Yu-sun, Arirang News.
And staying with the new prime minister nominee, Lee Wan-koo went straight to the press to outline what's at the top of his agenda.
Among his priorities, his promise to speed up the country's economic recovery if he's confirmed as the country's next prime minister. Our National Assembly correspondent Park Ji-won has more.
Speaking to reporters right after the presidential office of Chung Hwa-dae made the announcement, the three-term lawmaker said his top priority is improving the economy and the livelihoods of the people. He also stressed the importance of communicating with the opposing political camps and vowed to carry out necessary reforms. The 65-year-old politician also said he'd be direct and honest with the president.
I believe a good prime minister should not hesitate to be honest and forthright with the president. I will try to be a prime minister that speaks his mind, even if what I say is critical of the president.
The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy welcomed the nomination, complimenting the seasoned politician's mediation skills and willingness to communicate with opposing parties. Those are skills Lee has demonstrated since last May in his role as the conservative ruling party's floor leader. It was under his leadership that a highly controversial special compensation bill for the victims and bereaved families of last April's Sewol-ho ferry passed the National Assembly earlier this year. In a meeting Friday afternoon, interim opposition party leader Moon Hee-sang cautioned the prime minister nominee to be aware that his role has changed.
You were a good negotiating partner from the opposition party's point of view. Now you're no longer our negotiating partner. You'll be the subject of harsh criticism.
The main opposition party stressed that it will thoroughly verify the nominee's abilities and qualifications at his confirmation hearing. A request for a confirmation hearing will be sent to the Assembly on Monday, and the hearing is expected to wrap up by mid-February at the latest. The nominee is expected to step down as Saenuri Party floor leader on Sunday. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Well, only a few months after the United States ended its massive bond buying program, now it's the European Central Bank's turn.
Right. The ECB plans to pump $1.25 trillion into the markets in a desperate attempt to keep the Eurozone from shuddering to a halt. Our Shin Se-min tells us more.
The European Central Bank says it's going to buy an unprecedented amount of bonds, pumping money into the stagnating Eurozone economy. The central bank said Thursday that its purchases of government and private sector bonds worth 60 billion euros, or roughly $68 billion will begin in March and continue through at least September of next year, or even longer. The total will reach some $1.3 trillion, much more than the $568 billion initially expected. Speaking in Frankfurt on Thursday, ECB President Mario Draghi said the central bank would also keep Eurozone interest rates at 0.05%. The decision comes as the Eurozone is showing signs of growing into a deflationary spiral. It's hoped the massive stimulus will improve the bloc's sluggish exports and channel more investments into stocks. Not everyone is happy about the decision. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, for instance, wants countries like Greece and Italy to tighten their belts and stick to their original economic reforms.
Two things are part of this: a willingness to show solidarity, which we will continue to show, coupled with a willingness to take responsibility, which I am sure will continue to be shown by Greece.
The ECB money will also include some existing programs. Greece will be included under a bailout program, but with some additional criteria, as such countries have worse economic conditions. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And global markets have enjoyed a nice boost from this news of European stimulus.
Shares in Germany and France both are trading higher by over 2%, with London stocks trading up 0.4%. Asian markets also got a boost, with Japan's Nikkei and Hong Kong's Hang Seng gaining more than 1% at closing. Seoul's benchmark Kospi topped the 1930 mark for the first time this year to end at 1936, up 0.8% from Thursday. The Korean won closed higher against the greenback. The Korean economy grew at its slowest pace in more than 2 years in the fourth quarter of last year, setting off alarm bells among economic policymakers here in Korea who have given priority to boosting growth.
And to tell us what's behind this slowdown and what we can expect going forward, our Hwang Jae joins us right here in the studio. Thanks for coming in, Jie. So break it down for us, the data point that we got this morning.
Sure. The Bank of Korea says the economy grew 0.4% in the fourth quarter from a quarter earlier, and that, as you said, marks the slowest pace of growth since the July to September period of 2012 and 5 straight quarters of growth below 1%. The central bank attributes the slowdown partly to a drop in exports caused by the slowing Chinese economy. Exports to China is vital as it makes up 26% of all of Korean exports.
Due to sluggish exports, output in the manufacturing sector also contracted for 2 straight quarters in the October to December period last year. This is what we'll keep an eye on.
And there's no good news on the domestic front either. Domestic consumption in 2014 grew 1.7%, the slowest pace since 2009 when Korea was hit by the global financial crisis. Economic growth for all of last year was 3.3%, an uptick from the 3% growth posted in 2013, but far below the 4% range the central bank forecast a year ago.
And speaking of the central bank, the Bank of Korea also lowered 2015's growth forecast,
Right.
but it's optimistic, and it says we're on a steady growth recovery. So tell us more about that.
Well, the BOK is pointing to some factors that applied only for the fourth quarter and won't be repeated this year. They include a fall in government spending that dragged down construction investments by more than 9% in the fourth quarter from the previous one. It also cited a new regulation on mobile phone subsidies that cut sales of handsets. Some experts also add on to the optimism, saying that the economic conditions abroad are likely to improve in the coming months, giving a boost to Korea's traditional growth engine.
And also, the low oil price will help to boost the economy. And our trading partners, such as China or EU, will benefit through the oil price. And also, EU will grow with a more like a military expansion, which is done today. So, overall economy will improve in the first half of 2015.
A high-level official at the Finance Ministry also says that Europe's latest stimulus program will benefit Korea, while the central bank governor says monetary easing has a limited impact on the domestic financial market, as the move was widely expected.
So if the central bank governor is saying monetary easing has a limited impact, so does that mean that we are not going for a rate cut anytime soon, early this year?
Well, market expectations are mounting over another rate cut in the first quarter this year, but recent remarks by the BOK governor show that the central bank might be taking a step back from the possibility of further rate cuts. He said the central bank will take him to gauge the impact of the two previous rate cuts in the second half of last year, while expressing concerns about the country's snowballing household debt.
All right, so much more to look forward to for this year. Thanks, Jay, for that recap.
We've been seeing signs that North Korea and Russia might be cozying up a little more. We are waiting to see whether North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will choose Moscow as the destination of his first overseas official trip. Meanwhile, these two seem to be making some progress on the economic front as well. Our Connie Kim tells us more.
North Korea and Russia may be further boosting their economic ties. The South Korean daily Chosunilbo reported Friday that Pyongyang and Moscow are pushing to launch a $30 billion project. Under the plan, Russia would rebuild North Korea's aging power grid and transmit electricity to the north. In exchange, North Korea would give Russia metals such as gold and copper. Experts say the new deal would be a win for both countries. About 60 to 70% of North Korea's electricity is reportedly leaking from its power transmission facilities. And analysts say Russia will benefit by making use of natural resources that are under export sanctions by the European Union over the Ukraine crisis. Last year, the two countries agreed on a $25 billion project to repair the North's railways. North Korea and Russia's move toward greater economic cooperation comes amid signs of improving diplomatic ties between the two countries. On Wednesday, the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un gave a positive signal to Russian President Vladimir Putin's invitation to an anniversary event in Moscow in May. If Kim accepts, it'll be the first time a North Korean leader has not chosen China as his first overseas destination since the Korean War. Insiders say, however, it'll take time for Pyongyang and Moscow to expand their bilateral ties. Economically, the trade volume between North Korea and China was 65 times larger than trade between Pyongyang and Moscow in 2013. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
In the final part of our special series on startups in Korea, our Lee Ji-yoon got a chance to sit down with Lee Han-ju, founder of a global accelerator called Spark Labs. The company has helped 30 startups go global by linking them with Silicon Valley and other partners, providing funding, mentoring, and office space. But there are also many challenges that remain ahead.
Korean economy has a long tradition of cooperation between the private sector and the government. In fact, a lot of the chaebols, if you look at their history, got their start because of the Korean government support. However, what I see is that there's not enough support yet towards the early stage startups. And early stage startups are probably the riskiest form of investments, but it must be done because that's where the innovation and that's where all the excitements and that's where the next 10 years of Korea will be defined by. I know the government is planning to do more. It's a matching program where private sector VCs like us make a selection and we say we're going to invest in this company and the government comes in and do a matching program. So it's a co-investment. So I think that's a great idea because the private sector guys are probably good at selecting the winning ideas and the government can bring their muscle and actually help to accelerate that growth.
Then there must be some improvements that could be made though in the current system to better help startups. So what's your opinion on that?
Take one example of fintech. So fintech, it's a short for financial tech. Probably the most famous example of that is PayPal, or nowadays Alipay, or what you see with Apple 6, iPhone 6, with the Apple Pay. Internet banking. A lot of that you don't see in Korea yet, and that's because of some of the financial regulations that are in place. But it's time to rethink those. Otherwise, Korea will be left behind. There's a huge revolution happening around the financial industry. Technology revolutionizing the way people pay, way people exchange money, and that's a big business. Financial industry is a huge business, and Korea should not be left behind simply because we cannot imagine how to redo the regulation. So I think Korea needs to become really, really aggressive in terms of redoing the regulation around financial industry so that we could also have innovations around fintech.
What advice do you have for future startups or for those considering to start one but really can't because they don't really have that courage?
Just do it. Having gone through all those thought processes, there comes a time when you have to pull the trigger. I think we as a society needs to take a risk. For example, I think Korean moms need to become a little bit more tolerant of their kids trying a startup. Working for big corporations is not the only way for your children to succeed. Becoming a doctor and lawyer is not the only way for your kids to succeed. In fact, they could make a big difference by starting a startup. So do it, take risk, but if you're going to do it with the right frame of mind.
World leaders are heading to Saudi Arabia to take part in the funeral of late King Abdullah, who passed away early Friday morning.
With more, we turn to Son Jung-in at the News Center. Jung-in, who can we expect to see at the memorial service?
Well, leaders from around the world are arriving in Riyadh, including Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, who landed in the capital to take part in the memorial service. Funeral prayers will also be held at mosques throughout the country. Royal officials said that King Abdullah died Friday morning after suffering from pneumonia and a lung infection. Meanwhile, the news of his passing has caused oil prices to take a turn following weeks of steep declines. It prompted futures to rally as much as 3.1% in New York and 2.6% in London. Meanwhile, Saudi state TV said he would be succeeded by his half-brother, 79-year-old Prince Salman, who had already begun to take on some of the late king's responsibilities. Over in another Middle Eastern country, Yemen is now without a government or leader following the resignation of its president, prime minister, and cabinet members. The move came amid a heated standoff with Shia Houthi rebels who are trying to gain power in the capital. Kanye Lee has more.
After days of turmoil, Yemen is in even deeper chaos today. Its president stepped down on Thursday night, shortly after the prime minister and cabinet also called it quits. The resignations come a day after President Abd Mansur Rabu Hadi and the Shiite rebels known as Houthis signed a tentative peace deal. Under the deal, the Houthis, a minority group which has felt marginalized in the primarily Sunni country, agreed to pull their fighters out from government institutions in exchange for greater political power. However, even after the deal, the Houthis continued to occupy key parts of Yemen, including the president's residence, which was seized on Tuesday. The country, now without a leader, is of great concern to the United States and its allies. Yemen has been a key ally in the fight against al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which is, according to Western intelligence, the most dangerous branch of al-Qaeda. The group recently made headlines after claiming responsibility for the killings in Paris at the offices of French magazine Charlie Hebdo. On Thursday, the UN envoy to Yemen has called on the rival groups in Yemen to uphold the earlier agreement to share power and to avoid the violence.
I call you all to have wisdom and national spirit, give priority to the national interests of Yemen, and use dialogue and political action to resolve any of political disagreement away from violence, extortion, and procrastination.
The U.S. has also responded by reducing its embassy staff there due to safety concerns and said it's still assessing what a leaderless Yemen means for the West. However, the State Department added that its top priority in Yemen remains as the effort to fight terrorism. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Now, over in Japan, the country is trying to secure the release of 2 Japanese men being held by the Islamic State group. The deadline for Tokyo to pay the $200 million ransom for the hostages has already passed, with no progress in efforts to release them. Junko Ishiro, the mother of kidnapped journalist Kenji Goto, made a last-minute plea to the militants for his release, saying she would sacrifice herself in his place. Meanwhile, Kyodo News Agency reports Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe assured UK Prime Minister David Cameron that Tokyo would not pay the ransom demanded. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said earlier that the government was doing everything it could to save Goto and Haruna Yukawa, but that it had yet to make direct contact with the extremist group. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Che with the Sports Brief. Now starting off with Friday's KBL action, there was a pair of games on the schedule. Let's start with the tip-off over in Incheon. The ET Land Elephants faced off against the Goyang Orions, and the Orions controlled the tempo until the Elephants made a run in the final period. But the stampede was quelled and the Orions took home the close victory. Meanwhile, the LG Sakers erased a 13-point deficit late against the Samsung Thunders on the back of an inspired Davon Jefferson. They're perfect in 2015 with 7 straight wins. Moving on, Korean-born Victor Ron, whose historic run at the Sochi Olympics earned him hero status in Russia, will continue suiting up for his adopted country. The 29-year-old started the year at the European Short Track Speed Skating Championships. And barring any complications, the Russian Olympic Committee says he'll keep skating at least until next year's competition. An won 3 golds in Sochi for 6 total, setting the record for the most Olympic short track gold medals. And finally, Iraq and the United Arab Emirates are headed to the Asian Cup semifinals following their wins in 2 thrilling matches. Both were decided by the penalty shootout. Iraq and Iran went back and forth for a total of 6 goals by the end of extra time, but in the penalty shootout, Iraq went up 7-6 for the victory. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates stunned Japan, defeating the defending champions 5-4 in penalties after misses by Honda and Kagawa. With that, South Korea meets Iraq on Monday and Australia faces the UAE on Tuesday in the semifinals. And that wraps it up for sports this week. Your weather's up next. Have a good night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the Weather Outlook. Well, we are enjoying some early spring-like conditions here in Korea under mostly clear skies. And some good news as we head into the weekend that moderate winter conditions will continue. But Rain clouds may move in tomorrow evening, and this could lead to showers starting on the western coastline tomorrow before spreading to most parts of the country. Other than that, it looks like the fine dust index may rise above average levels in the capital regions tomorrow. On to Saturday's ratings. The high here in the capital hits 6, while Daegu and Gwangju hit 10. On to other regions. Jeju reaches up to 12, Dokdo 6, Mount Kumgang -2. That'll do it for now, and back to you guys.
Thank you very much, Park Geun-hye, and that's Primetime News for this Friday. I am Kang Tae-ri. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Sean Lim. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.